You know that moment when life is normal. Then one sound splits your timeline into before and after. Apollo 13 was 2 days into the mission when a routine procedure triggered a pretty large bang, followed by power fluctuations, seconds. Later came the line that became a global shorthand for crisis. Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here. And here's the part science-minded people never get tired of. This wasn't saved by vibes. It was saved by constraints, checklists, system design, and human discipline, under a clock that did not care about courage. Today, we're going to ride through the greatest successful failure story in engineering history. Breadcrumbs for the rabbit hole. The setup, why Apollo systems were built with redundancy, and what redundancy can't save. The failure, what actually broke and why. The pivot, the lunar module becomes a lifeboat. The puzzles, free return trajectory, power down, CO2 mailbox, water/heat math. The return, re-entry and splashdown. Normal, somehow. The modern mirror, how to think clearly when time is hunting you. Let's launch. Apollo missions were designed like a high-stakes orchestra. Thousands of parts, one performance, no intermission. Apollo 13 launched April 11, 1970, from Kennedy Space Center. Crew: Jim Lovell, Commander; Jack Swigert, Command Module Pilot; Fred Haise, Lunar Module Pilot. The plan was simple: go to the moon, land, return. But here's the real truth. Spaceflight is not plan versus no plan. It's plan versus the universe. And the universe is undefeated. Space doesn't hate you personally. Space is worse than that. It's indifferent. About 55 hours, 54 minutes into the mission, a command to stir cryogenic oxygen tanks is executed, and within moments, a bang, electrical anomalies, and a rapid cascade. NASA's detailed chronology captures the pressure behavior in oxygen tank number 2 leading into the event, then the call to Houston. And if you've ever faced a personal crisis, you know what comes next. Your brain tries to bargain with reality. It's probably nothing. It's a glitch. Maybe if we restart. Apollo 13 didn't have the luxury of denial. Because oxygen in space is not a comfort, it's the timer. Here's the breadcrumb trail. Simple and real. The failure investigation traced the accident to oxygen tank No. 2 in the service module. Damaged insulation and an internal electrical short led to ignition and a pressure rise until the tank failed, blowing out a panel and crippling vital systems. This is the part that makes engineers nod grimly. Disasters aren't usually one mistake. They're multiple small vulnerabilities that finally meet. It's like your life falling apart because you skipped sleep, ignored a weird noise in your car, trusted one minor red flag, and then acted surprised when the universe filed the paperwork. The command module was the home for re-entry, but now it was bleeding power and oxygen capacity. So they did the unthinkable, calmly. They powered up the lunar module and used it as a lifeboat. This is crisis management 101 at its purest. Don't wish for the perfect tool. Repurpose the tool you still have. NASA's own mailbox write-up states plainly. Because of the oxygen tank explosion, the crew had to use the lunar module as a lifeboat. Imagine buying a luxury apartment, then living in the stairwell because the building caught fire. That's the lunar module, not designed for this, but it works. Before the explosion, Apollo 13 had performed a mid-course correction that took it off a free return trajectory and put it on a lunar landing course. After the explosion, the core question became, how do you get back safely to Earth? NASA's mission details describe the response. Ground teams computed a burn to get the spacecraft back onto a free return course, performed hours after the explosion. This is one of the deepest lessons in thinking under time pressure. When you're lost in crisis, you don't need a perfect path. You need a stable path. Free return is stability. Gravity does the steering if you stop fighting it. Now the problem shifts from trajectory to biology. With 3 astronauts breathing in a vehicle designed for 2, CO2 became a killer. And here comes the most famous engineering improv scene. Because it's real, NASA describes the mailbox solution, an adapter built and tested on the ground so the crew could fit a square canister system into a round one. And the popular shorthand is accurate. Fit a square peg into a round hole. This is the moment where humanity's greatest technology becomes duct tape and vibes. Except the vibes are math, but let's respect the sophistication. This wasn't random tinkering. This was known parts inventory interface mismatch diagnosis rapid prototyping on Earth procedural transmission to crew verification under constraints. That is crisis engineering. Crisis movies love explosions. Real survival is usually a spreadsheet. They had to conserve power for re-entry, meaning the command module was shut down and the crew endured extreme cold and tight resources. NASA's mission report notes re-entry, splashdown, and recovery were normal, which is the most terrifying compliment in context. Because normal only happens when thousands of decisions go right in a row. Apollo 13 returned safely to Earth on April 17, 1970. Britannica describes the astronauts standing aboard the recovery ship after splashdown that day, and NASA's mission report states splashdown occurred about 3 nautical miles from the primary recovery ship. That's the end of the flight, but it's the beginning of the mythology. Not because it was glamorous, because it was competent under pressure. Apollo 13 gives us a blueprint for thinking when time is hunting you. Name reality fast, no denial, diagnose. Stabilize the system, get to a survivable trajectory, free return mindset. Prioritize oxygen, power, heat, communication, the basics before the fancy. Use what exists, lifeboat thinking. Make small decisions that keep options open, because big heroic decisions are expensive. Teamwork beats genius, because no single mind can run all the constraints at once. And here's the final question for you. When the clock is against you, can you become the kind of person who stays calm enough to do the next right step? If you want more stories where history becomes a survival manual, subscribe and comment.